What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video. This time we're going to be going over the Magicka Templar DPS for Clockwork City. Just like the rest of our build videos, we will be going over gear, skill sets, CP distribution, and then we're finishing off with a 3 million dummy par so you guys can get an idea of what the rotation will look like. So we're going to start things off here by looking at the gear we'll be using. Going to be using 2-piece Grothar because our Magplar build does stay within melee range because our spammable for at least this build is going to be sweeps, which you need to be in melee range for. So we're going to be using Grothar. Got 2 light, one with a health enchant. That's because we will be using Witch Mother's Potent Brew instead of blue max health, max magicka food. This is just so we get some extra magicka recovery so we have some better sustain. Magicka Templars do have a bit of an issue when it comes to sustain. It's not as bad as sorcerers, but it is a noticeable sustain problem. For our 5-piece, we are going to be using Julianos. It is a crafted set, so you're going to make your chest as a heavy piece, and that'll give you a little bit extra resistances. And then you can make your feet or your legs to be medium. You can use medium Grothar shoulders or head, because all 4 of those armor slots do use the exact same armor rating. So if you get lucky and get a medium Grothar Divine Shoulders, for instance, you can wear that and just craft light for everything else in Julianos. For our second set, we will be using Moon Dancer. You can use Infallible Aether or Master Architect. Those are the 2 other sets that will give you Minor Slayer as the 3-piece bonus. Moon Dancer and Master Architect will give you slightly higher DPS compared to Infallible Aether, but it's kind of pick and choose. Whichever one you end up getting first is usually the one you're going to end up going with. All 3 pieces have spell damage enchants. You can replace one with with a regen glyph if you are finding yourself still struggling with sustain. The DPS loss is minimal at best. The extra sustain will more than make up for the loss in spell damage. For our weapons, we're going to have a Moondancer Inferno Staff infused with a shock damage enchant because you are probably going to be a Dark Elf. You can go with a Flame damage enchant if you so choose. I'm using shock damage because that'll help give us a little bit more concussed uptime, so we have a little bit higher off-balance uptime, but you can go with a Flame damage enchant. It's kind of a pick your preference. And our back bar, we have the Maelstrom Lightning Staff, which has a weapon damage enchant. I'm going with Nirnhoned. You can go with Infused if you want. It's really up to you. The advantage of having Nirnhoned is if you are heavy attacking on your back bar, because it's the Lightning Staff, your heavy attacks and whatever dots you have down while you're on your back bar heavy attacking will all gain that extra 200 spell damage, which is pretty useful, so you have a lot more AoE benefit from using a Maelstrom Lightning Staff Nirnhoned. Quickly go over our stats. All 64 points are into Magicka. You see here with Witch Mother's Potent Brew and 1 health enchant, we have 16.4k health about. If you want to hit 17k health, you're going to want to put a few points into health. I believe you need to put 7 or 8 points into health in order to get up to 17k. I'm comfortable running 16.4k. It's really up to you if you want to hit 17k or not. If you're just starting to get into Vet Trials, I highly recommend either going with the blue food, max health, max magicka, or putting some points into health so you can hit that 17k threshold. For our Mundus, we're going to be using the Apprentice. You can use the Lover if you need the extra penetration. Don't forget that the desired penetration that you're going to want to hit is 18,200, so just take a look at your group composition, what kind of debuff you're going to get, and determine whether or not you need to use Lover to hit that penetration cap, or you can just make do with putting some extra points into Spell Erosion. We'll be going over that kind of sticky situation when we go over our CP points. In terms of skills, our front bar, Puncturing Sweep, Reflective Light. Reflective Light actually does more damage overall than Vampire's Bane because you get 2 of the initial flame damage hits, and as well as you get some more dot damage as well. So if you take a look at the tooltip here, you see that the 2 damages actually don't add up together. If you take a look at Reflective Light, you actually do about 3,000 more flame damage over an equivalent period of time for the dot, plus you get double the flame damage initial hits, so you're actually doing an additional 6,000 on top of that. So Reflective Light, despite what it seems like, does actually give you more DPS. Purifying Light, this is where we would put our shield. Our shield is going to be either Harness Magicka or Dampen Magic, but since we're doing a parse later on, we're going to be using Elemental Drain for right now. Inner Light for that 7% extra Magicka, and we're going to use the Destra ulti so we can maintain our Ancient Knowledge passive. Remember, to maintain your Ancient Knowledge passive, you need to have a Destruction Staff ability slotted. Because we are using a shield instead of an Elemental Drain in an actual raid scenario, you will need to have your Destro ability slotted as your ultimate in order to take advantage of the 8% extra damage. That does not impact sweeps because sweeps is considered an AoE effect, but it does affect Reflective Light and it does affect Purifying Light. Our back bar, Blazing Spear, Blockade of Storms, Radiant Oppression, Channeled Focus. We have Inner Light again. You can replace that with Rearming Trap if you want for the Minor Force. It's up to you. And then our Destra ulti once again. For our champion points, you now have 230 points to use across each of the 3 categories, 3 colors. The CP cap was bumped up with Clockwork City. Starting with our Thief Stones, our green CPs, 75 Tenacity, 75 Arcanist, and then the other 80 can be split among these next 3 nodes however you see fit. 28 in Shadow Ward, 26 in Tumbling, and 26 in Warlord. That just helps conserve stamina when we have to block cast and use Break Free, which you will use fairly often in vet content. Now for our blue tree, this is kind of where you have to do a little bit of math and talk with your raid team and kind of figure out how many points do you want to put into Spell Erosion, or if you're going to be using the Lover and put no points into Spell Erosion to hit that penetration cap. Remember, you're trying to aim for 18,200 penetration. Try to get as close as you can. This particular CP setup is optimized for the raid groups that I run with. We run with Infused Torog's Crusher, and we have a Stamplar where we try to have a Stamplar in the group at all times, so we do have Power of the Light up at all times. So this is the CP point distribution that I find to be most effective for my raid group. Your distributions may vary. 44 in Elfborn, 49 in Elemental Expert, 40 in Mastered Armed, and 75 in Thaumaturge. Now, when you're taking points in and out of these different nodes to make up for Spell Erosion, you always want to have 75 in Thaumaturge for that Exploiter passive. Exploiter is still very powerful in this patch. And then for the other 3 nodes, the order that you're going to be taking CP points out, my recommendation, start with taking out of Elfborn first, then Mastered Arms, and then Elemental Expert. Because Magicka DPS classes are not running as much spell crit as they used to, taking points out of Elfborn will have a less significant impact on your DPS compared if you took it out of Elemental Expert or Mastered Arms first. And as for our red CPs, 56 Hardy, 56 Elemental Defender, 34 Thick-Skinned, 48 in Ironclad, 1 in Spell Shield, 1 in Light Armor Focus, and 34 in Bastion. You can play around with these CPs depending on the content you're trying to clear. For example, in Maw of Lorcage, you're going to be taking a lot more magic damage compared to physical damage, so you might want to put points out of Hardy and into Elemental Defender, or put it into Thick-Skinned to help mitigate some damage over time, or Ironclad to mitigate more direct damage. So you can play around with this. This distribution is kind of a one-size-fits-most scenario. Some other things that we're going to quickly go over before we start our parse. For potions, you're going to be using Essence of Spell Power, Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, Major Intellect, and some Magicka. Make sure to have Alchemy up to 50 so you can always have these buffs up no matter what. As long as you're using potions as soon as they're available to you, you will always have these buffs up. This potion can be made using Cornflower, Lady Smock, and Water Hyacinth. So we're going to go ahead now and start our parse. Remember to keep in mind this is a 3 million dummy, so it's going to take between probably around 85 to 100 seconds to finish the parse to kill it. So whatever sustain issues you see here will only be exacerbated further in a real trial, real raid scenario, because you'll be in the fight longer, you'll be playing the mechanics, so do keep that in mind when we do this parse and we see the final number. So we're going to go ahead and start our parse. In 3, 2, and 1. So there we go, a 32.6k parse. Going to pull up comment metrics real quick so you guys can take a look. What I mean with the sustain issue, you can see here our regen per second versus our drain per second. We have about 300, we're losing 300 magicka per second on average. So that's what I mean by sustain issues. When you look at Magicka Nightblade, for example, those two numbers are closer together. The disparity is not as great as Sorks. Sorks have between 350 to 400 if you're running Witchmother, so it's not quite as bad as Sorcerers, but it is still something that you're going to want to be aware of if you decide to play a Magicka Templar DPS. So you might want to put that extra regen glyph instead of the spell damage glyph, for example, on your jewelry, or you might want to stick with Witch Mothers instead of max health, max magicka. So that's it for this video. Hope this guide helps, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.